Barron Trump sat at a lavish table in one of the most prestigious restaurants in New York City. The elegant chandeliers above cast a soft glow, illuminating the richly appointed interior with its plush velvet curtains, marble floors, and the subtle hum of soft classical music in the background. Despite being in the middle of a busy evening with patrons enjoying their gourmet meals, Barron felt a sense of calm that only such opulent surroundings could offer. It had been a busy day, and this dinner was a moment for relaxation with his parents, who were seated at the table with him. But what started as a quiet, enjoyable evening soon took a sharp turn. The waiter approached the table with a silver tray, elegantly balanced on his hand. His white gloves gleamed in the light as he moved effortlessly through the room. His attire was impeccable, and his smile was flawless. But there was something in his eyes, a glint that was hard to miss. Barron, ever observant despite his young age, noticed the subtle way the waiter glanced at him. The waiter leaned down to offer the menu, and Barron politely glanced at it. He wasn't one to demand attention or make a scene. However, as he spoke to his parents, the waiter hovered a moment longer than necessary, watching him intently. "Excuse me, young man," the waiter said, his voice smooth but laced with condescension. "I believe you might need some assistance with the menu. I'm sure you wouldn't know much about fine dining, considering, well, your background." Barron froze. The words hung in the air like an insult, sharp and pointed. It was as if time had momentarily slowed down, and every eye in the restaurant was on him. For a moment, Barron's mind raced. He wasn't one to speak up easily, especially not in such a public setting, but there was something about the waiter's tone, the way he assumed Barron didn't belong there, that stung deeply. He glanced over at his father, Donald Trump, who sat stone-faced, clearly aware of the situation. The waiter didn't wait for a response. He simply nodded to himself as if satisfied with his own little jab before moving on to another table. But Barron wasn't just going to let it go, not this time. As the waiter walked away, Barron stood up, his tall frame making him appear even more imposing than his 18 years would suggest. He moved slowly, purposefully. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the room as others in the restaurant noticed the young man walking confidently toward the waiter. The waiter looked up in surprise, his smile faltering when he saw Barron. "Can I help you, sir?" the waiter asked, his tone now clearly unsure. Barron's gaze was unflinching. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. This wasn't about power or revenge. It was about dignity. "I don't think you understand who I am," Barron said, his voice calm but firm. "But I'll make it clear. I don't need anyone to explain what I can or can't do. You insulted me, and that's something I won't tolerate." The restaurant fell silent. The guests around them watched with bated breath, unsure of what would happen next. Barron continued, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've been raised with respect, humility, and hard work. I don't need your approval, and I don't need you to judge me based on your assumptions. But if you ever disrespect me again, you'll regret it." The waiter, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to smooth things over. "I didn't mean to offend you, sir. It was just a joke." Barron shook his head, his expression unwavering. "It wasn't a joke. It was an insult, and I'm not one to let that slide, especially when it comes from someone who believes they're superior simply because of where they work." The room remained quiet, all eyes on Barron and the waiter. For a moment, the waiter stood still, unsure of what to say. Barron's words were powerful, and there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. But what happened next was something no one could have predicted. Barron reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to the waiter with a confident, almost challenging smile. "This is my card. I suggest you look me up before you decide to insult anyone again." The waiter hesitated, glancing down at the card. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized the name. Barron Trump, son of Donald Trump, the former president. I'm so sorry, Mr. Trump," the waiter stammered, his face turning red with embarrassment. "I didn't know." Barron's expression softened just slightly, though his voice remained firm. "Now you know, and I expect better from the people who serve me and my family." Without another word, Barron turned on his heel and returned to his table, where his parents were waiting. As he sat down, the tension in the room slowly began to dissipate, but a new sense of respect seemed to settle in the air. The waiter, visibly shaken, stood frozen in place for a moment before quietly retreating to the back of the restaurant. His face was pale, and his once confident demeanor was now replaced with a sense of defeat. As the night went on, Barron noticed the subtle shift in the behavior of the restaurant staff. They were more attentive, polite, and respectful, even though none of them dared to approach him directly after the incident. The air was different, heavier, but also charged with a sense of awkwardness. Barron could feel the weight of their gazes, but he didn't flinch. He was unshaken, knowing he had done the right thing. His mother, Melania Trump, leaned over to him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You handled that well," she said, her voice calm but proud. "Sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to make people understand the boundaries they shouldn't cross." Barron nodded, still feeling the lingering rush of adrenaline in his veins. "I didn't want to make a scene, but he pushed me too far. I won't let anyone disrespect me like that." His father, Donald Trump, looked at him with a gleam of approval in his eyes. "You did the right thing. People need to understand that respect is earned, no matter who you are." After dinner, as they prepared to leave, Barron couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Not only had he stood up for himself, but he had also made a powerful statement. In a world that often judged people based on their status or background, Barron had shown that integrity and dignity couldn't be bought. They had to be earned and defended. As they walked toward the exit, the waiter came forward once again, his hands trembling slightly. He looked genuinely remorseful, bowing his head in apology. "Mr. Trump, I just wanted to say, again, how sorry I am for my actions earlier. I let my assumptions get the best of me, and I will not let it happen again." Barron looked at the waiter for a moment, considering his words. He saw sincerity in the man's eyes, and though the incident couldn't be undone, he could recognize that the apology was genuine. "Thank you," Barron said, his voice calm but firm. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." The waiter nodded, his relief evident. "I will, Mr. Trump. I promise I will never forget this." As the Trump family exited the restaurant, Barron glanced over his shoulder. The waiter stood at the door, watching them leave, his posture now a mixture of humility and respect. The streets of New York City were buzzing with the usual nighttime energy, but Barron felt different. He felt stronger. He knew the world could be unforgiving, but he also knew that he had the power to shape how others treated him. No one, no matter who they were, had the right to make him feel inferior. The next morning, the story of the incident spread throughout the media. Social media exploded with speculation, and news outlets covered the exchange. Some people applauded Barron's composure and ability to stand up for himself, while others criticized the situation, calling it unnecessary drama. But Barron didn't care about the opinions of strangers. He had made a statement not just about his own worth, but about how people should treat one another with respect, regardless of their status, age, or background. As time passed, Barron became known for handling situations with remarkable maturity. The incident at the restaurant was just one example of how he carried himself with poise, and it became a symbol of the strength and resilience that Barron Trump had within him. No one would ever underestimate him again. And as the weeks went by, Barron's actions began to inspire others. People who had previously written him off as a privileged young man were now reconsidering their assumptions. Barron wasn't just the son of a former president. He was a young man who had learned the value of self-respect and standing up for what was right. The waiter, too, would never forget that night. Though he initially thought he was above Barron, he would learn that respect and humility were the true markers of a person's worth. He spent weeks thinking about Barron's words, and eventually he began to change his approach to his job and how he interacted with others. He knew that he would never allow his assumptions to cloud his judgment again. And Barron? He simply moved forward with a quiet strength, knowing that one moment of standing up for himself had not only shaped how others saw him, but it had also helped shape who he would become in the future. A young man who, with dignity and resolve, had made a difference.